Welcome back to Napp Motorsports, and today we're going to go over the seemingly age-old question that I get asked a lot and I've never really had the right answer for, is what boundary engineering oil pump is right for your Miata build? I do want to start off by saying this pump right here for my track car motor was supplied by Travis, Megan, and their team over at Boundary Engineering. So big thank you to them for hopping on to support the track car. If you don't know, I've been using these pumps for years. I have 6 built Miata motors in the shop right now. Each one of them has a Boundary Engineering oil pump on it. I reached out because I felt it was important to provide this information to you guys, because me as a consumer, I never really knew what the difference was or when what pump was beneficial. So I always just stuck to this pump, which is a BPS2. So I do want to start off, let's talk about why the stock Miata pump is not really the answer. It works for some people, but it shouldn't be the long-term solution on a built motor. The pump gears inside are just a cast material. And what can happen under high RPM driving, like on track or high load driving, say you have a boosted car and you're making a bunch of power and you're just really ramming up the RPM, that internal pump gear can shatter. And once the pump gear shatters, you lose oil pressure, you get 0 oil pressure, and that pump material will work its way through your oil system and you will kill your head, you'll kill your crank, you'll kill your bearings, your motor will be toast. So the only time I use a stock pump is if I'm rebuilding a stock motor to go back into a stock car. If I'm doing any sort of modification, the pump is getting upgraded. So I, in the past, have always run the BPS2. I've never varied from that. I've never run an S1, I've never run an S3, mainly because I didn't know the difference, but it's still, this pump, we'll get to it in a minute, but this pump will cover the majority of your oil pump needs for, I would say, 90% of Miata people. Boundary offers 3 pumps. They have an S1 pump, they have an S2 pump, and they have an S3 pump. And you can get different variations of really the S2 if you want. We'll get to that because that's what this is. But the S1 pump is pretty much a stock replacement. The only difference is it uses the billet chromoly gears from Boundary. So if you're doing high RPM driving or you're just doing an autocross build, that pump will work for you. It's got the same flow characteristics as a non-VVT pump. So it's the 0.373 inch thick billet gear inside. It just won't shatter and leave you stranded somewhere with a blown up motor. So if you're doing some light refresh and you just want to throw a nice quick pump in there, before you go OEM, I would recommend doing the BPS1. That being said, the BPS2 is a higher flow volume. It is 0.430 inches thick on the rotor gear or the billet gears inside. So you get higher flow through your motor, which is important to clean all that oil out of your main bearings, rod bearings. It pumps more oil up to your head. And the most important thing in an engine is the oiling system. The more oil you get through, the cooler it stays. If you're pumping the bare minimum, the oil's not going to evacuate from your main bearings and your rod bearings. It's going to heat up as that engine's spinning at 5, 6, 7,000 RPM, and you can kill your bearings, spin a bearing that way. It really hurts the longevity of your engine to not be pushing the right amount of oil through. So BPS2, thicker gear, which is higher flow, same billet system inside so it won't shatter. And the nice thing is with all of these pumps, you can adjust the shim pressure of the release valve. So if you're doing some higher RPM driving and you need a more consistent oil pressure at 8,000 RPM, you can punch up from, the S2 comes standard with a 72 PSI shim, but you can punch up to, there's an 84 PSI shim on my workbench right now. You can do, I believe, a 90 PSI shim. And if you do the S1, they have shims from like 66 up. So it's fully adjustable shim setup. It's just a thickness, so you could stack, you could modify, you could thin them out if you're really going for a specific value. I've never needed to go beyond the shim kits that they offer, so just bear that in mind. And I will take these out of the box and go over one with you and show you the difference between the two and how to shim it and all that. So BPS2 is where you can really start to get into the customization though. So this is a standard BPS2. This is a BPS2 BBPM. So what we have here is the same pump. This one has a billet backer plate and the gears have been Martin Ware treated. So the billet backer plate helps with reducing pressure loss and it allows for less air induction at low pressure, like low RPM type driving. So a pump is only as good as its suction, and if you have air induction somewhere, you're going to lose suction. So the billet backer plate should help with that. And then the Martin Ware treatment is what I'm mostly excited about. It is a gear treatment. So the gears themselves, it's the same billet chromoly gear, but they have been treated, and it helps with wear, and it's been tested up to over 9,000 RPM. So for, say, my track motor, where this pump is going, I'm gonna beat that thing up. I'm probably gonna money shift it because I did it last time I drove it. And to have that high RPM protection could be the difference between me blowing that motor up on track because of bad driving, or me just whoops, put it back in the good gear and go back to it. So high RPM, track driving, stuff like that. The M is probably, you at least want the Martin Ware. The billet backer plate doesn't hurt. So that's why we went with this one. I've never tested one of these, so I'd really love to test it out on that motor and get some good feedback on it. And then the next level up is the BPS3. So what that is essentially an S2 with these mods. So it's S2 billet backer plate and the Martin Ware treatment. But you can also do custom porting. So you have to reach out to Boundary for this, but you can custom port it for higher flow. They will tailor the shimming to your needs, and they kind of offer a little bit more support through that. That's a very rare case. I haven't built a motor here, I think, where I would need the S3, but say I'm building an endurance turbo BP, or even really just an endurance BP, I would probably consider reaching out and having a pump tailor-made for that motor. The longevity of an endurance car or the high load of a turbo track car, you want the extra flow and you want the right shim pressure, and there's just a lot of specific details that are better off being handled by a professional like Travis and his team over there. So those are the differences. I'm gonna say from my own personal experience, BPS2 is the one that is most suited for 90% of you guys, especially you street turbo guys. BPS2 is the easy answer. Comes shimmed at 72 PSI from Boundary, so you don't have to do the shim kit or anything like that. And I find that works best for most people. If I'm putting a pump on a motor, if it's S1 versus S2, I'm personally gonna go S2. Track guys, I would highly consider at least the Martin Ware treatment, if not the billet backer plate. And then again, if you're doing endurance racing or high horsepower BP stuff on track, the BPS3 is probably right for you. So let's get into these. This one has to go on my track car motor today. So you will see this in that track car refresh as well. I just wanted to do a dedicated video because I know there's a lot of questions around this. So let's open the S2 first. We'll look at it. I'll show you how you would put the shims in it because this one is getting shimmed. And then we will go over the one that's going on my track car, which has the billet backer plate and things like that, and we can compare differences. So BPS2, here we go. So the nice thing is, comes with certificate, signed, comes with all your data, your blueprinting clearances, everything, super tight tolerance on all of this stuff. I tend to either save this or mark the serial number down, but the serial number is also on the pump, so if you don't save it, it's not the end of the world. Most important piece of any part is the sticker. I have it on my workbench. It does come with a note now. They no longer include a front main seal, so my recommendation is to always go with an OEM Mazda seal. But the pump comes nicely bagged. It's sealed, so there's no debris in here. And it does come with an oil pump O-ring, which is very important. I forgot that once, like 10 years ago on an engine I built, and you find out really quickly. So let's get this out of the bag. I'll show you guys the shimming procedure, and we'll get this one assembled and ready to go on a drift motor that I have behind me, but I'll show you the process. It's pretty straightforward, and then we'll get into this guy. So here we have the pump. It's got your serial number on it, your denotation of what it is. So this is a BPS2. Boundary stamp there. So it's really easy to see if you buy a built motor from somebody what pump you have. And you can also email Boundary with your serial number and they can tell you any details about the pump or anything like that. So on the back, this is the back surface. So this is the backer plate. This is your standard BPS2 plate. It's the standard gears inside. And you can see there's little flats on this here. That's what lines up with your crank. And then the O-ring, when you install it, here we go, goes into this little spot right there. So pretty critical, don't ever forget that. Whoop. And then we're not going to go over the install on this. I'll cover it in my track car build, but all you get is a nice coat of RTV around here. Make sure you clean it off beforehand and you are ready to go. So that's if you're installing it as is. We are going to shim this pump. So I'm just going to show you that real quick. Here on the bottom, so this port on the bottom here, you will see a cotter pin. Sometimes it is a snap ring, not a cotter pin, I found. So inside there is a stack of what looks like washers on top of a spring, and that is your release valve pressure. So what we're going to do is a little sketchy is I'm going to straighten out these cotter pin pieces here. We're going to compress the spring with something like a screwdriver, and I'm going to pull the cotter pin out and then slowly release the screwdriver. So these are just thin metal straps. Straighten them out like this. So you can see they are straight in line so I can pull the pin out. And now this part gets a little weird. The best way that I found to do this is to take a screwdriver and you can compress the spring. Get a smaller pair of pliers. So cotter pin has been removed, and now slowly release the spring. What you are left with is, in this case on the S2, it's 2 washers, and then this centering ring, which centers the spring, and then inside is the spring. So we'll put the spring back in, we'll put the centering ring back in. So we're going to leave these out because these equate to 72 PSI, and then if you have their shim kit, they will have them labeled. So you can see this is 84 PSI. I have 90 PSI, 72 PSI, which is the equivalent of stacking the 2 washers up, and then 66 PSI. So if you want the S2 flow, but you want lower pressure for whatever reason, you can put a 66 PSI shim in here. But we want more oil pressure at high RPM. So what we're gonna do is put this 84 shim in there, and all you do is you set it up on top like this. I'm gonna recompress the spring, and I'm gonna put the cotter pin back through, and then we'll fold the cotter pin over so it doesn't fall out, and then now this is shimmed to 84 PSI. And then fold these back out. And this is now an 84 PSI pump. So it's as simple as that. Just make sure that you don't try to pull this pin out, or if it's a snap ring, you don't pull the snap ring out without putting pressure on the spring. I have absolutely launched one of these things across the shop before, and then it's really hard to find, and it's not something you just go buy in the store. So be very careful, push down, pull the pin, slowly release, put the new one in, push it in, push the pin in, and then release. So, and always make sure you fold if you have a cotter pin, make sure you fold the cotter pin all the way back, to touch the housing again. So I'm gonna put this back in the bag because I'm not gonna use it today, along with the O-ring. But that is the process of shimming a boundary pump. Now let's get into the BPS2 BBP with Martin wear treatment. So this is the one that we are putting on the race motor. Again, comes with all of your specs, serial number, quality control checks, and a sticker. Bagged, sealed, has an oil pump O-ring down here in the corner, and we can see a glimpse of the billet gear on the backside here. So, looks identical from the front. We have our serial number, we have Boundary's BPS2, and we have the Boundary logo over here. Same shim setup on the bottom, and I'm not gonna open this to show you the inside, but this is the billet backer plate. So Boundary racing pumps, high flow 1.8 long nose crank, billet steel. It's got a nice, really nice finish on it, nice chamfer, everything is really nice. And you can kind of see it. See how the pump ring is blue? That is the Martin wear treatment. So you can only see it on the backside. That is the Martin wear coating on the inside of the pump that is going to protect this thing when I money shift it. I will not be shimming this. We're gonna leave this at 72 PSI. I don't run an oil cooler, I don't run a turbo, anything like that, so 72 is gonna be perfect right out the gate, on track. This is the first one with a billet backer plate that I have actually had my hands on. It is a really nice piece. The finish is super nice. You can't tell from the front, but it is super well done. So I'm excited to put this on the track car motor. We will be covering that. It's gonna be a longer video of just rebuilding the entire track car. So keep an eye out for that. We'll go over the install of this, and then we'll do some on-track driving with it.